This is going to be a video about carabiners, about all things carabiners. Their shape, their size, their weight, their strength, what those low numbers on the side mean, the parts of a carabiner. We're going to discuss the anatomy, everything, excepting things like, oh, I would use this carabiner with this device, or I would use this carabiner in this situation. So this is going to be purely about the physical carabiner itself. So let's discuss the first distinction, the one that's probably the most obvious, the one you're most familiar with, which is locking versus non-locking carabiners. So a non-locking carabiner can be thought of as any carabiner that requires only one motion to open. Right? Just like that. So all I gotta do is push in. A locking carabiner is one that takes more than one motion to open. So this one, when locked, cannot be opened with one motion, and I have to make more than one motion, so I have to screw the gate down, and then it's unlocked. It goes without saying that these are more secure and are more difficult to accidentally open, and as such should be used in situations where you would prefer very strongly that the rope doesn't come out. So it's a risk-benefit analysis. When we get some of these others, we'll discuss their shape and anatomy and all those things. Okay, so in the realm of locking carabiners, you have a couple of mechanisms. Right? So the most popular by far is just a screw gate. So this one is the typical short thread, so it doesn't go for a very long time. It's just from my palm to my finger before it's all the way unlocked or all the way locked, as opposed to something like this old attaché, which has a very long thread. So that just means that I can roll it from the middle of my forearm all the way to my palm before it locks up. And then there are others that have very short threads that will unlock very quickly. So this green one goes from the tip of my finger, like that. Sorry, from the palm just to the middle of my finger, right? So from the middle of my finger all the way down to my palm, as opposed to something like this old gold attaché or any of these other screw gate carabiners that have a longer thread, just meaning that it takes more time and it takes more unscrewing to actually unscrew them. Another thing to keep in mind if you're trying to think about the safety of a carabiner. Not a huge deal, and it's not realistic to think that these are going to unscrew themselves, but I'm trying to be very thorough here. So locking mechanisms range from a very, very simple twist and pull in, so again, just twist and pull in, that I would consider the least safe of the three most common. So the three very common locking mechanisms: locking carabiner that's a twist lock, like that, so twist and in, and then there's the screw gate, with which we are all very familiar. Again, all of these are pretty simple to understand. And then there are the triple action or triact or there's whatever you want to call it. It's the carabiner that takes three distinct motions to open. Right? So this one has a little pin on the side that I can't twist it for that pin. So I'm going to lift up and then twist, like so. And then I still have to pull in. So it's 1, 2, 3. So the trade-offs here, right? So this one is obviously the most secure, but it's also very awkward to use. It's not as fast, and it just got hung up there. I'm trying to be realistic here. It's not terribly awkward to use, but like that. It does get hung up sometimes. Down from that is a screw gate. So this is a little less secure, but not as much of a hassle to deal with, and a lot of people are going to be very, very familiar with these. So no matter where you go, screw gate carabiners are going to be there. And then there's the twist lock, where a screw you might have to slide it a couple times. This only requires that one little piece of a turn like that. But so the trade-off here is that so long as this is clean and oiled and not going to be something that could potentially like get stuck in the unlocked position, you know that this is always locked. If it's closed, it's locked. You should still check it, but as a means of realism, this is more likely, if you're going to forget to lock one, it's going to be one of these, because these can be left unlocked like that, and it can look locked if you're not paying attention, but that just comes with the trade-off of this is like a little faster to use, and it's a little more secure to the degree that it is essentially self-locking, whereas something like this is more manual. You have to kind of be on top of your game. Now the anatomy of a carabiner. So this is best demonstrated on this carabiner. The carabiner is composed of the spine, the basket, the gate, the locking sleeve or collar, and the nose. So that little piece right there is the nose. So the spine is the main load-bearing component of a carabiner. We'll discuss more about this in a moment. The basket on a carabiner like this, which has a wider basket at the top, this specific shape, along with something like this, you can see they kind of look like pears, are either called Carabiners or HMS. HMS is German for Halbe Mastwurfscherung. I think I got that probably really wrong, but it's that means half clove hitch belay. There's going to be a separate video all about HMS carabiners and clove hitches and munter hitches, and don't worry about it. But just know that these are a very distinct shape, and they're used very common to use these for belay devices. But the nose can be a couple different things. So this one has a nose that you'll notice is completely snag free. So there's no sharp elements to it. It would be very difficult to get a rope caught on that, as opposed to something like this, where there's that hook there. So that hook catches that, you can see that pin on the inside, catches that pin, and then you lock it just like that. The danger here is that slings and pieces of cord and things like that can get hung on the hook nose. So this is marginally important, but again, this is another difference, so we're gonna point it out here. The basket is just this large, typically rope-bearing surface on an HMS carabiner. When you refer to the basket, you're typically talking about this section down here. This is also a basket, but just because this is designed to bear the rope, this is typically what you're referring to. In something like an oval carabiner, either side can be the basket because it's uniform on either side. Now the spine. The spine of the carabiner is the reason for its strength. So the spine can either be something like this I-beam shape. You can see how it kind of looks like it's been hollowed out there. Or it can be round, like this. This is a perfectly cylindrical, round, all the way around version of this carabiner. So this is an I-beam shape, and this is a round stock. So not a round stock, round stock. Again, why you would use this over this and all that can be found elsewhere. Just talking about the carabiners now. There's a bit of a hybrid in between. So this old Black Diamond Rock Lock has a sort of I-beam, so it's not perfectly, you can see it's a little flat on either side, but it's round on the inside. This is for making rope run over it more smoothly. But why would you ever have a carved out section versus a round, or a carved out stock versus a round stock? So these are obviously heavier, but they have their benefits, like things roll over them more easily, and these are come with the obvious benefit of being lighter because there's less material here. onto the numbers on the spine, like we were talking about. So where does the strength come from on these? This is going to be backwards, but on all carabiners and on yours and on these, on all modern carabiners, it will say a number, and with K, it'll say KN next to it. So this one, you can probably make out, says 22, 7, and 6. 22 is being loaded this way, so just like that. 7 is being loaded this way, perpendicular to the spine. And then 6 is a little picture of an open carabiner. So 22 KN means it can withstand 22 kilonewtons of force in this direction. A kilonewton is 224.81 pounds. So I should have done this math beforehand, but 22 kilonewtons just means 22 times 224.8 pounds. So this carabiner, and I'll get an even larger one to demonstrate, this carabiner is worth 27 kilonewtons. That's something like, I'm going to say 5,000 pounds. It's between 2 and 3 tons. This carabiner is worth, oh no, this one's easily over 3. This carabiner is worth 24. So that's a bit smaller of a number, but still, this is an amount of force that you would never be able to generate in a real life scenario. If you generated this much force, it would break your spine because you fell like in a harness. You would die before you ever reach this much weight. So even though this one might look bigger and burlier and stronger, it is stronger, but not to the degree that's important. So anything that you can use this one for, you can use this one for. This is going to be more convenient for certain things because it has this larger basket. But don't fret about, this one is really big and strong, so I can't use this one to belay. If it's got that kilonewtons in numbers represented on the side, you can just punch in the math, and you know that when it's loaded down the spine, as the little picture here indicates, it's gonna withstand so much force that it boggles the mind. You can look up how not to highline. They have so many videos of brake tests on these things, where even really, really old ones still break at upwards of 20 kilonewtons and thousands of pounds. So the next question is 7 kilonewtons. Why is it 7 kilonewtons pointed this way? So now when we pull like this, we're pulling on the spine. But if you pull like this, you're pulling on the gate. And the gate is weaker because it has these little separate parts here and moving bits. And the spine, I'm sorry, that was probably really loud. This nose is thinner than the rest of the carabiner, so they're weaker that way. Again, still 7 kilonewtons times 224 pounds, that's like 1,500 something pounds. This is plenty, but try and avoid loading it this way if you can. You want to load it down the major axis, not down the minor axis. With that said, if you load it down the major axis but the gate is open, you get 6 kilonewtons. So it's a substantial loss in strength, because now instead of pulling just on the spine, even though it looks like we'd be pulling on the spine, the top of the carabiner is going to pry open and the thing will snap. So 6 kilonewtons, still a ton, but you can avoid this open carabiner issue by just locking your carabiners. This is a really simple fix. So just make sure you're locking your carabiners, and then you don't have to worry about the open carabiner strength. Now, the shape determines the strength to some degree. So this is as we already learned, HMS or Carabiner. This is an oval. This is I'm sorry, let me get to the other one first. This is a D-shaped carabiner. And this is a offset D. So this is kind of like a D, but it's a little pinched at the bottom. So knowing that the spine is the strongest part, it should be kind of obvious which of these would have the highest strength rating. So the D-shaped carabiner encourages the load. So if you put a rope right here, it encourages the load towards the spine. You put a rope or a sling or anything right here, you use a carabiner, it will go to the spine side of the biner, as opposed to if you put a carabiner, or if you put anything on an oval carabiner, even if it's toward the spine initially, when you let go, it'll tend towards the middle. So since the spine is the strongest part, the D-shaped carabiners and the offset D-shaped carabiners make the load favor the load towards the spine. So these are stronger. Again, this oval is still worth 23 kilonewtons, so still insanely strong. Don't worry about it, but just to understand why some are stronger than others. The more favorably they load the weight down the spine, this is perfectly in the middle, so they're splitting the load between the spine and the gate, so this is not the strongest. The more they load it down the spine, the stronger they're going to be. So onto the material. All of these carabiners are aluminum and zinc, so that they have aluminum and zinc within them to the degree that, or for the reason that they're lightweight. So they're still very, very strong and they're lightweight. This also allows you to color them, which can be handy. If you anodize aluminum, you can have very bright colors. But there's also, just because they're aluminum doesn't mean they'll be anodized. They can stay a nice shiny silver. Other materials of which carabiners can be made are steel. So this is an oval, not going to be as strong as an aluminum offset D or an aluminum D, but notice that it's an oval and it's still worth 25 kilonewtons. These things, steel carabiners, get up to be like 60 they're insane. Steel is very much stronger than aluminum. At the cost of, they don't look as nice. I mean, come on. Look how pretty that is. Look at that. It's gross. But they are very, very strong, and the main appeal to steel is that they do not wear. It is very difficult for one person to wear a steel carabiner into the ground. So let me see if I have a worn. Yeah, here we go. So this aluminum carabiner, you can tell because it's colored, you can see it's starting to wear on the inside where I've been rappelling or climbing or belaying off of that. Steel does not wear. It's a much harder metal. So they're very nice as like a dedicated rappel carabiner, or if you want to make your top rope anchor out of these, they're nice because you don't wear them down and they last a lot longer. There are several reasons to go with steel, but it is substantially heavier than the average carabiner. Quick draws are going to have their own video: solid gate, wire gate, bent gate, straight gate, rubberized side, and free side. So just know that there is a quick draw video, but they're such a dastardly little piece of equipment that you can find them elsewhere on this page. Alright, some more unique carabiners. This is obviously a non-locking carabiner with a little wire gate, but it has the function of being able to lock open, which is not typically something that you want because, as we saw earlier, there's a reduction in strength. And this is a specialty. This is like a purpose-built carabiner for something that we're not going to discuss here, but you can. There are carabiners like this, like the Kong Panic, that have the function of being very touchy. So this is a trigger wire, and as soon as you touch that little bar there, the gate snaps back shut, and now you've got whatever it was that you were looking to clip. This here, let me put this up. These two are both kind of specialty gates and a kind of novelty almost. There's a zillion different locking mechanisms. These are just two of a couple special ones. This has two gates, so it makes it a little stronger, and you get the security of a locking carabiner without having to have like a big bulky sleeve or anything, because you have to open in on this one and on this one. Additionally, this is kind of a weird shape, so it's like an offset D, but it's got a weird curve in the spine. These have their places, but they're not very common. And then finally, there's this offset D with somewhere between a locking and a non-locking carabiner. So it's just got a little metal tab there that sits in front of the nose like that. So this is a key lock nose, not one of those hooked noses that we saw earlier. And then you can slide that little metal tab down and let the gate open like that. All right. That is it for carabiners. Like I said, we're not going to discuss exactly what these are for. I mean, when you would use them in certain situations. But this has just been a general, pretty thorough dissection of what the average carabiner is made out of and the physical piece of equipment that is the rock climbing carabiner.